Hi guys, it's Josh Lloyd back again with another tutorial video today. In this video, we're going to be looking at setting up your league settings. We touched on it a little bit in the Draft Tracker tutorial video, but I'm going to go through it in a bit more detail. Up the top of the Basketball Monster menu, you can see the settings tab, and then the first option down in that menu, there is league settings. So we click on that one. And we've got a whole bunch of stuff here. And this is really, if you don't get this right in setting up your league, then a lot of the other features across Basketball Monster, they won't work as ideally as what they need to be. Now, over here, let's start with league basics. It's the easiest way to go. Name it. For the easiest, like I've got a lot of leagues that I have to deal with, but just so you can find that league, call it whatever you want, call it the league name. Then you choose, is it Roto, is it head-to-head? If it's a points league, you choose head-to-head there as well, and then we'll go through that in a second. Daily or weekly transactions, that helps for things like the Smart Tool as well. So can you make changes every day of the week, or is it you set your lineup at the start of the week? Same-day transactions, sometimes on Yahoo you can't make waiver claims, like it's got to be processed before midnight the night before. The start of the weekday, it's nearly always Monday, and you can do exclude IR from analysis, meaning guys that you've got in your injured reserve, you take them out of analysing the team because obviously they're not playing. Sometimes that'll be appropriate, sometimes it won't be. I generally will tick that on. Now we go to league size. This is self-explanatory. Number of teams. How many teams in your league? Straightforward. Number of players in your team. Easy. Number of bench spots. That will auto-populate. Game limit is something that's important as well. So you're talking about that in Rotisserie. As you can see, if you hover over that little blue and white eye there, it will tell you game limit is the total games for your complete team. So if you have 10 active players, they can each play 82 games, so you enter 820. And that's the standard for Rotisserie leagues. In head-to-head, that won't be the case. But in Roto leagues, you add that, and that helps to balance all these settings as well. Next, we go to the active roster spots. I always like to add this in. It helps auto-populate that bench figure, and just you've got that idea there. And it helps with positional value and that sort of stuff too. So you add it in. This is a standard Yahoo setting: 2 utilities, 2 centers, forward, power forward, small forward guard, shooting guard, and point guard. You can set that up however you need to. If you're doing an auction, it's super important that you fill this out, because if you don't have this filled out, you won't get the dollar values for the player. So a standard auction is 200, but you might have 100, you might have 400. That's as self-explanatory as it gets. This next one does confuse some people. Obviously, you can hover over this thing that tells you what that is, but it's trying to get an idea for your league of how many players are going to go for $1. How aggressive is your league in a stars and scrubs mentality? Are people going to be overspending for the top guys? Because if they are, then you can bump that up a little bit. In general, I like to think of it as all my bench players are $1 players. So in this case, I've got 3. But if you know that your league goes super hard on these top end guys and people are paying $90 for Durant and $80 for Yanni, you can add that up to 4. You can bump it to 5, because there'll be some teams that have maybe 2 $1 players and some teams that fill out their roster with 6 $1 players. So it's, I guess, having an idea of your league. But if it's a new league and you don't know how things are going to work, then it's generally the number of bench players that you've got is a good estimation. Even if in the start of the auction you see guys start going way above their price range at the start of the draft, go in and edit that and bump that up. Make it, instead of bench, make it bench +1 or bench +2, and that will adjust the values of the other players. Quality games, I talk about this all the time. A quality game is it's a day in the NBA schedule where there are fewer games, so anyone who you add off the waiver wire will be able to be slotted into your active roster. A day like a Wednesday in the NBA when there are 11 games on, most of the time you'll have 10 active players, so anyone you add off the waiver wire won't actually be able to be put into your starting lineup, and that's important to know. I set that at 8. I find that if there are 8 or less games on a day, and that's what that is, like how many games on a daily setting limit. If there's 8 or less on, you are going to have an empty roster spot and you can slot a guy in. If it's anything, 9's a touch and go on, anything 10 and above, you probably won't have that active spot. And it gives you an idea. Like, you can have a look at a team like the Lakers, who have 48 quality games this year based on my 8-game limit, or the Utah Jazz have 29. So you're looking at lower end Jazz guys who might be your 11th or 12th best guy. You're going to have 20 less opportunities to play them as opposed to a low-end Lakers guy, because or whichever the team is, because they're going to sit there and they're going to play on Wednesday. They're going to play on Friday when they just can't get into your active roster, because you'll have 10, 11 guys already there playing and they'll just sit on the bench. So it can be a waste, and it's especially important when you're looking at weekly projections and making your moves for the week to see whether, okay, this guy plays 4 games, but can I get 4 games out of him? Or is he playing on Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and 3 of those games he'll just sit on my bench, so it turns out to be a 1-game week. You can enter your playoff weeks here, and that's another thing that you can put up in the draft tracker, how many games the player actually plays throughout the playoffs. So you click on your start week, you set what week your playoffs start, what week your playoffs finish. Pretty self-explanatory there as well. Fantasy provider, must do this one, of course. You're playing on Yahoo, you're playing on ESPN, you're playing on CBS, you're playing on Fantrax. Not only does it import the positions of those players, which of course is important to know, who's eligible at what position, but it helps us connect the draft tracker as we saw in that draft tracker video. So that's important too. The league defaults, these pretty much stay as they are. Per game, stat display, you generally don't. Okay, it's easier to see if someone hits 2 threes a game rather than, they hit 150 threes for the season. I think most people prefer to look at it on a per game basis, but you can set it to totals or per 36, and value type means that you can have it displayed as, say, per 36, but the overall Z-score value can be displayed in per game. So you can do that. Use replacement players, as I've talked about before, and if you read the explanation here, it fills all projected missed games with a replacement level player, which is the average player available at the player's primary position. For example, if Dwight Howard is projected to miss 10 games, we will find the average stats of a center likely available on waivers and add 10 of their games to Howard's projections, meaning you get 82 games there, but it will reduce the averages. So it gives you an idea, especially for guys who are going to miss long terms, Jabari Parker, Zach LaVine, Isaiah Thomas. Like, how do those guys, for Joel Embiid, like with projected games missed, Embiid is the 12th ranked player in per game, but you add the use replacement players, he falls down to about 30th, and that sort of makes sense. You've also got the calculate using owned, and that's handy like after the league has drafted. So basically when we do the values and the Z scores, it's based on who we assume is the top 156 players for a 12-team league. But in many cases, those top guys won't all be drafted. So if you click this option, it will base the values on who is actually owned in the league. And once a draft is done, that's probably the best way to go about it. The next area, we look at category settings, and you just choose your categories. So all the different categories you've got here, the standard 9 categories are the first one, and then you've got all these different ones: 3-point percentage, 2-point percentage, adjusted field goals, defensive and offensive rebounds, double doubles, triple doubles. You can see all the different ones there. If they're on in your league, you tick the toggle as on. If they're not on, you leave it as off. If you're going to punt that category, you set it to punt. I always auto punt turnovers in any league that I'm in. But you can, if you'd say I'm punting assists, so you click the punt button there, and that becomes a punted category. So the stats still show up, because if you put it as off, the stats don't appear. So if you put assists as off, when you go look at a player, assists won't appear in a column. But if you put it as punt, it will still appear. It just doesn't get taken into consideration in Smart Tool, in daily projections, weekly projections, and looking at your team analysis. You can also look at points per stat. If you're in a points league, you bring that up, and you just, how many points for each point? How many points for each 3? How many points for each assist? And you go through and enter all those different categories there. The other thing you can do in category leagues is weight categories, and that's something it's not available on every site. It is available, I know for sure, on Fantrax, but you can have a league where the points category is weighted more significantly. So it's not like each category is one win. Like, the points become a more important category. And if you look at the definition here, the weight applied to this category. I've never played in a league with weighting on categories, but it is something you can do if you want to look at and go, I want to make turnovers less important. Let's weight them at 0.5. And that's something that you could do in your league. If you want to have that 9th cat, you want it to be turnovers, but you don't want it to be as important, you can weight that. But that's not something that you really ever see. Getting all of this right and accurate is the key to having successful drafts, successful trades. It helps in all your trade analysis, all that stuff, because if something's off, if your auction numbers aren't there, they won't appear. If your team size is wrong, all the values will change. If your bench players change, your roto head-to-head type, your categories, all that stuff has to be right. And once you've got it right, you'll be able to hopefully go out there and dominate your league. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.